On this day back in 1919, Hugh Leo Carey was born in Brooklyn, New York. That's right, this is his 92nd birthday. After serving in Congress for more than a decade in the 60s and 70s, Hugh Carey was elected New York's 51st governor. In recent years, his time as governor has become a point of interest. As the state flounders in deficit, many have reflected on his time in office, including Andrew Cuomo, where he had to make some difficult decisions to pull New York City out of bankruptcy. My next guest co-authored a book about that saga called The Man Who Saved New York. His name is Robert Polner, and he is joining us to reflect on Hugh Carey's life today. Rob, thanks very much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So really, actually, you didn't hear anything about Hugh Carey until your book came out, of course, and then Andrew Cuomo seized on the book and started sending it around to labor leaders, urging them to be part of the solution as they were in the 70s. Do you know, I mean, do you think that was an apt comparison by Andrew Cuomo?
I think he was signaling that he was going to be seeking the cooperation and the help from labor. And I think certainly that the precedent was set by Hugh Carey during the fiscal crisis of 1975. Andrew Cuomo has also pointed out that the situations between the comparison is not complete or completely correct between 75 and today's fiscal problems, in that 1975 you had a potential imminent bankruptcy of the financial capital of the country and New York City, and today we have a structural deficit, which of course means a disjuncture between the ongoing costs of medical care, education, pensions, and the like, and the revenue base.
You know,
so it's a difficult, intractable kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, also, look, just before we get into the politics of Hugh Carey, he was really a singular guy. I mean, he lost his wife pretty early on when he was running for governor. He served anyway. He had a huge family, and they all were living in the mansion. I mean, it was just... and he had this amazing personality, and later on he became a little bit eccentric, but a lot is not recognized about exactly sort of who he was and the role that he played in New York politics.
Well, the term he came back to a lot in my interviews with him for the book was mirthology, which was his way of saying that he tried to bring a touch of showmanship and certainly a sense of humor to tough times, and he did that. And he, you know, remember, he became governor after the summer of Watergate, when politicians were, you know, guilty until they could prove themselves innocent, you know, in the public's mind. And he did that with his conviction, I think his intellect, sense of humor, and the crisis of 1975, the fiscal crisis, was an occasion that he rose to, and it's a precedent that Andrew Cuomo and others are wise to invoke.
This is the guy who brought us, of course, the days of wine and roses, right? He was a really interesting man, and he also was present in the Capitol long after he had departed. I mean, he was at Governor Pataki's States of the State, all of them, if I'm not mistaken. He did not show up recently, even though his profile, if you will, played a role in Andrew Cuomo's campaign and his subsequent early days as governor. He is doing okay, you're hearing? He had some health problems. He is, of course, 92.
I've heard he's doing okay. I understand he attended church services and attends them now. He's you know, seems to be rallying from all I hear and see in the wake of some significant health problems. Yes.
It's also possible, one could argue, that without Hugh Carey, there would be no Cuomo dynasty. I mean, that he really laid the groundwork for the political juggernaut that was Mario Cuomo and now subsequently Andrew Cuomo.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he did provide entree to Mario Cuomo's public service, and he did that for so many key people. I think one of the reasons why New York City stayed out of bankruptcy was the kind of people that Hugh Carey looked to bring into state government to help him through what was an unprecedented crisis. Remember, I mean, we hear a lot about fiscal crises now. They're across the country, but this was a singular moment in 1975. New York City had never, no one ever really imagined that a city the size of New York, with its glorious history, could go broke. So Carey was the first to really come to terms with that, and he had to do a lot of convincing at every level, Republicans, Democrats, state, city, local, union leaders, business leaders, that this was a crisis that had to be reckoned with. And they responded well to him. He was, in a way, they respected him and accepted him as a credible figure and believed him when he said that this was a crisis that could really not only put New York City in a ditch, but the whole state, and possibly have international repercussions as well. And I think part of that was
No, go ahead.
part of that was he brought he had a not insignificant congressional career, is responsible for a lot of key bills. He'd been on the Ways and Means. He had served as part of the Greatest Generation in combat in the European theater during World War II. He grew up during the Depression. I mean, he really led a life of substance. And somehow or other, I mean, people didn't necessarily know all that about him, but it burned through at the moment when it was really called for.
And also, he was a pragmatist, politically speaking, before. I mean, you just saw him standing there with Rudy Giuliani, a Republican mayor of New York City. I mean, before it became sort of the in thing to be pragmatic and to be working across lines and speaking of bipartisanship, et cetera, he was one of those guys who threaded that particular needle. So it is...
well, he came after the 16 years of Republican leadership in Albany, and he was one of the first Democrats in the country to kind of blow the whistle on unlimited kinds of spending on state spending on social programs, and he, certainly deserves some recognition, I think, for that.
Well, it is, of course, again, his 92nd birthday. I want to thank you so much, Rob, for being here with us. It's great to see you, and happy birthday to former Governor Kerry, wherever he may be.
Thanks, Liz.